This week's episode is brought to you by Campaign Refinery, an amazing new email marketing automation tool. Look, in the world of digital marketing, there's a lot to keep track of. We all know this. As much as we're in love with social media and the power of social conversation here at Social Inc. and on the All About Digital Marketing podcast, we are well aware at just how powerful email marketing can be. Email marketing is not dead. In fact, it's never been more important to help you leverage your presence everywhere else into the one channel that you'll own, regardless of what changes Facebook, Twitter, or any other platform makes in the future. I've known the founder, Travis Ketchum, for years, and he's been a past guest on the podcast, episode 15 if you want to listen to it. I've personally used his other products before, and they've been fantastic. The amount of thought that he's put into each and every one of what he's created has been incredible. I'd highly encourage you to try their free 14-day trial at campaignrefinery.com to see what world-class email marketing automation can do for you and your business. Massive thank you to Travis and Campaign Refinery for their support of the All About Digital Marketing show. Welcome to the All About Digital Marketing podcast. The show all about
digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Brought to you by Social Inc., a digital marketing agency specializing in social media and content marketing for brave brands and forward-thinking SMEs. I'm your host, Chris Bruno, and as always, we're here to bring you the most actionable tips, tricks, tools, and insights to help you achieve more when it comes to your digital marketing. Subscribe to the show and be sure to share with a friend if you found something useful or interesting. You can find all the show notes and more information on www.allaboutdigitalmarketing.co.uk. Nick, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, you bet, man. So excited to be here. Thank you so much, Chris, for having me.
So Nick, for anyone who doesn't know you yet, give them a little bit of the elevator pitch so that they can know a little bit more about you and where you've come from.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Well, my name is Nick Cavuoto, and I help entrepreneurs build businesses. That's really at the central theme of what I do. And, my background has been with Fortune 500 brands and consulting executives who originally, going back in the early 2010 era, those who were lost in today's marketplace of digital media and how it was converging into traditional. And so I was coaching executives on how to handle that imbalance and also the opportunity in the marketplace. So that's where I started, and then worked for a lot of startups in Boston and helped grow companies from 0 to 3 to 5 to 8 to 10 million. And it's been a huge treat. That feels like a lifetime ago. Now where I spend the most amount of my time is in helping entrepreneurs go from 6 to 7 figures by identifying really what it is that they want to accomplish in the world and what they want to achieve. And I do that through mentorship, which is a beautiful thing. And I believe that relationships are rocket ships and that human connection is at the core of success for entrepreneurs, and that we're called to solve the biggest problems in the world. It's not other people. It's entrepreneurs who are going to create the change, lead the change, and be the ones who are going to bring, I think, the next era of what's happening in our planet in a really cool way and usher that in. So I'm here to chat with you about how relationships are rocket ships and how that really connects to the bigger picture around entrepreneurship and how we can leverage mentorship to get to the next level.
So I loved that the first time you said it, and straight away that was one of my notes that I wrote down. So relationships are rocket ships. So I think obviously this requires a little bit more information. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. I think the core thesis is pretty simple. The people who you spend time around, right? They're the ones who are going to help you get to where you want to go. I remember sitting in a restaurant in San Diego with the first mastermind group that I was ever a part of, and looking around and being like, I would literally not be at this huge event. It was a huge marketing event that I had a lot of opportunity at. I did over $100,000 in deals at that place, at that event. And I said, there would have been no way that I would be here if it wasn't for the people who were sitting in this room. And it's funny, there's like the unlikely heroes There's the people in the room who you never would have thought would have helped you, or you maybe thought that you were ahead of them, or you maybe thought that, that you were more there to help them than they were to help you. And it's so funny how something so unassuming can actually become the thing that really makes us, successful, or that allows us to connect with our deeper purpose, or allows us to connect deeper to the things that we want to pursue and be a part of in the world. And I looked around in that room and kind of like really pretty emotional. I was just like, man, this was a really special event. And I said, I don't know, relationships or rocket ships. And that really was like how it came up, dude. It was like from this deep emotional reflection of, I had my mentor who was sitting in front of me, who opened so many doors for me. He delivered on his promise to be there at my events and to coach me when I needed it and to provide me objectivity when I needed it. And yet at the same time, there were the unlikely heroes in the room who I never knew outside of that community, who I never thought would help me get to where I needed to go. And they absolutely did it. So relationships are rocket ships. It's the fastest way to get to where you want to go. And I also think it's the most ethical way as well. So
I think there's probably,
I'm sticking to it.
There's probably quite a few cliches that we can use to justify this as well, right? So, and I think, it's not what you know, it's who you know, would probably be one of the best ones. But also the idea, you mentioned this as well, this mastermind group, and this is something that's really important. A lot of people talk about it, how you can become the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And that can either be a positive or a negative. And it's something that probably a lot of small business owners especially don't necessarily realize. And it's something that probably took me 6-7 years of running my own business to really realize, which was there was no such thing as competition. There was no such thing as, limited marketplace, or, that I had to fight X to get Y or anything like that. And actually I realized that by having those good relationships, and some of which, today we've now been working with some of our clients for going on 9 years. We've worked with other agencies that we continue to work with over the space of, 5-6 years. And all of that is based on the relationships that we built. Relationships are hugely powerful, right? And it's in a way that we often overlook and maybe focus too much on things like the product or the service, as opposed to that connection that we can actually build with someone.
So true, man. 100%. 100%. I think that really at its core, it's seeing other people be successful is a really powerful thing. And certainly the people who you surround yourself with, they should be people who are bringing you to your future, not people from the past. Now, the cool thing is there's some people in your life who will transcend time and space, and they'll be with you from the get, right? Whether that's a spouse, or as your kids get older or whatever, or you have a business partner you've been in business with for 20 years. And, it's like Wozniak and Steve Jobs, like they did it together till the end. And you're going to have, maybe if you're lucky, 1 to 2 people in your life who are like that, if you're lucky. And so, really understanding that, like, I think there's a lot of fracture around relationships. And, it's funny if you kind of look at like the classic daddy issues, right? If we're just going to kind of go there, for a lot of guys who are entrepreneurs, this shows up in their life in the context of not feeling worthy. And they don't feel worthy typically, and it has to do with a fractured relationship that they have with their father. And so you find entrepreneurs who are really hustling and pushing and driving hard, trying to prove something. And sometimes they arrive to the point, because I've coached them, they get to this point of where they don't even know what they're like chasing after. I built a $2 million business and then was like, this is not serving me. And I ended up blowing it up and shutting it down. It's not a story that a lot of people hear, is like, oh, I shut down a $2 million business on purpose. But I think that at its root and at its core, it's one of those things that you look at that has to do with relationships, how it translates to business. I think business and life are actually the same thing. It's a mirror. So whatever shows up in your personal life will show up in your business. Whatever shows up in your business will show up in your personal life. So the allies that you have, and the people who are standing next to you, and the people who are there with you for like the whole game, right? And they're standing with you, versus the people who betray you. the people who, steal your clients, the old employees who make you go into debt, like whatever it is, it's all part of the journey and part of the process. But it does come back to this bigger question that's really surrounded on the idea of like, why? Why am I working so hard? Why am I pushing so hard? Why am I trying to drive such huge success? I'll say it this way. If you want to build a business that's over $3 million in revenue per year and you're a personal brand, you got to have something wrong with you.
Why do you say that?
Well, it's pretty simple. If you really get to the core of what people want, most people will suggest they want freedom, but they put themselves in bondage to their business in order to achieve it. So let me unravel that a little bit more. Spending over $40,000 a month is really hard. It's really hard. I had to actually try to find stuff to buy. And, I have $1 million house. I drive a Tesla. I have my kids in private school. Right. So what I'm saying is that there's only so much that you can do with so many resources between the gaps, of let's call it 1 million and 10 million or 1 million and 5 million or whatever it is. Because at that level, you have to play a different game. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. But the reason why you have to have something really wrong with you is because there's no reason why you need that much money. So your why has to be so big, so audacious, so extravagant that there's probably a high level of trauma that you've experienced in your life, because that's the only thing that could drive you to the point of having to have more, is the reciprocal value of the market giving you a pat on the back, or clearing your own conscience of the idea around, they never told me I could, and I'm going to show them that I can. Because you don't need the money. If you're making over $400,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of the 1% on the planet.
I think what's really interesting now is I'm wondering how many people are listening to this going, I'd love to earn 40K a month, but more importantly, that are asking themselves that ever so magic question that Simon Sinek is famous for, even though it's been going around since, long before Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich. But why? Why do we do what we do? Not what do you sell, not, what are the services or products you offer? Why? Why do you do what you do? And I think that's a huge question, right? You've mentioned there a couple of different examples. I will give you this, Nick. It's the first time daddy issues have ever been mentioned in nearly 60 episodes. So well done on that one. But, the fundamental answer to that question is very, very hard for so many people to answer. Have you found that when you're working with people, when you're coaching people?
Absolutely. And usually the way I help them uncover it is by asking them what they want. 9.9 out of 10 entrepreneurs that I ask that question to can't answer it.
And the other 0.1% usually end up, or actually, there's a big part of that 9.9 mention anything to do with financial goals instead of actually what the why is.
The reason why most entrepreneurs are broke is because they don't have a big enough why.
That's really interesting.
There's no consequence if they don't have the resource. They just don't get their BMW. So they'll always be broke because they've never allowed themselves to stretch the balloon and to increase the capacity of what they can hold in their container, because it's all about them. It's the biggest misstep.
That kind of a mistake, this is actually really deep and I quite enjoy this kind of conversation, but that kind of thinking invariably also referred to as things like limiting beliefs and stuff like that. But that kind of thinking, it also radiates onto the people around you, right? So if you're the CEO, if you're the founder of a startup and you don't know what your why is, you don't really know what the goals are, like you said, you can't expand that container wide enough, the chances are that infiltrates everybody within the startup. Would you agree?
100%.
Okay, so let's get away from the doom and gloom, and we've just really upset everyone. So they've either left and stopped listening, or if they're still here, then they got a bit more grit than the 9.9%, the 9.9 out of 10. But what would you say are some of the key things, or some of the key ways that you've helped people to really start figuring out what that why is? And also, how do you help them understand how important the why is?
Well, let me answer the first question. The way that I've helped people uncover their why has honestly just been by creating an environment for them to experience transformation for themselves. So a lot of times we get stuck at plateaus, right? So there's certain plateaus that we might hit, or there's certain areas of our business where we might find ourselves like getting really stuck. And stuck is just actually a judgment of yourself. So like when people are like, man, I'm just so stuck and I don't know what I want to do and I don't know what to do. And it's just you're passing judgment on yourself. So just relax, take a step back and realize how amazing you actually are. Look how far you've come. Look at everything that you've overcome. Look at all your success stories that you've already had. Again, entrepreneurship is about failure and pain. And that's just one of those things that, like, maybe it sounds doom and gloom, but it's just me being honest. That is the game of entrepreneurship. It's the game of high performance. Consistently performing at a high level under pressure is extremely difficult. And discomfort is equivalent to pain. So it's very uncomfortable. It's painful. It's death to self every day. It's an incredible reward. And only those with the biggest grit can actually push through those stages in order to get to whatever it is that they want to accomplish. That's why the why, again, needs to be so big. And so the way that I help people see that and create that space is really by giving them permission. I've told people 100 times, my job is I just hand out permission slips all day to actually go do the thing that you know that you're supposed to go do. And I use some Jedi mastery and wizardry of intellectual, process or intellectual property of my processes and my systems and my strategies in order to essentially get people to just commit to themselves. So the way that I pull people into really what I believe is their calling is by first allowing them to see that it's not a competition, it is a calling, and that you have a unique purpose on the earth to do something that's really special, and filling their bucket first in that way, and then creating a space for them to be vulnerable to figure it out. Entrepreneurs who have come through my mentorship, and I do it in a group capacity because I think objectivity is important. It shouldn't just be my brain. It should be other people's too. I'm just a facilitator and I offer a lot of value, sure. But I think that it's really amazing when you bring people together. Objectivity is the one thing that as humans, we don't have. You can see everyone else in a room of 1,000 people, but you can't see yourself. You can see everyone else's genius, but you can't see your own. And I think that that's why, God, universe, whatever you want to deem it as, provided us with the inability to see ourselves to force us into relationship with others. And so the big idea there that's unpacked is really that we need other people in order to see the best version of who we are. And we need other people to hear our why, sometimes for us, or remind us of what our why is, in order for us to get to the next level of business, to get to the next level of relationships. You know what my why is?
Nope, but I'd love to hear it.
Well, there's a couple things, but here's the biggest one. When people ask me like, how much money you want to make, or where do you want to be, or 7-figure, 8-figure, or 6-figure, or whatever, I tell them like, I need $50 million. And they're like, oh, wow. Well, why would you need $50 million? I'm like, well, because the story's unfortunate, but it is what it is. My wife's father was murdered when she was 3. My wife did not grow up with having her biological father there to teach her all the very simple things in life. And it was a total happenstance thing, but he was killed. And every Father's Day is hard. Every one of his birthdays is hard, right? It's tough. It's a tough reality. And it was extremely difficult for her mom, who was a single mom raising a 3-year-old by herself, because at 25 years old, her husband-to-be was murdered by a gang member, when he was delivering a pizza. He was in law school, and he had a job as a roofer. And he was also delivering pizzas to send money back for my wife when she was 3 years old to, be able to do life in those things. That's my why. So when I get up every day, when I don't feel like doing it, when I feel like I need to develop a relationship that's going to get me to the next level, when it's 2 a.m. and I'm still grinding it out, that's why. Is because there's so many other people like my wife who are out there who need access to entrepreneurship so that they can break the generational things, or they can, supersede the situation that they're in, or the single mom who's trying to make it and trying to figure it out and trying to do the whole thing on her own while also managing her kids and their family and all those things. That's why.
That's a pretty powerful story.
It's very deep, man. And that's what I've found and what I've identified. And for some people, it's part of their story. Maybe they were, maybe they were abused, or maybe they had an unfortunate event in their life and they want to fix that problem. Well, that's what's going to allow the energetic container for you to be able to be experienced in such a way that can allow you to actually receive what the universe has to give you. And the bigger the why, the bigger the try.
Oh, I like that. I think that's an important one.
It's pretty straightforward. Yeah.
It's something interesting though, because from an agency point of view, we bring why up a lot. And I'm amazed at how many companies, big and small, really struggle to be able to define that. And that's something that's really, I don't want to use the word disappointing, it's the wrong word, but it's something that it really amazes me actually, that so many businesses, and these are sometimes fairly successful businesses, they're doing well, they're up and running, they're making money, they've got good revenue, they're supporting themselves, but they can't get past that next step. And you're right, without that why, without figuring out what that real reason is behind everything else that you do as a company, and that resonating, that why being so big and so powerful that it resonates with every single person in the organization. It's something that's hugely powerful when it's there, but it's something that's also leaves a gaping hole in organizations when it's not.
If you chase money, it's like chasing a cat. It's going to run away and you're never going to be able to catch it. And I see so many agencies that just, over time, I ran a $2 million agency. I mean, I get it. I was in those circles for a long time. You've got to have a big why. And, it can be for the people that you serve, and for maybe there's a niche that you really believe in, or maybe, let's say that, there's somebody who was sick and they had cancer and now they help, there's a niche within healthcare that they help for people who are experiencing certain levels of health challenges, and they can really contextualize the message and they know what it feels like. And the best marketing strategy ever is to care. And that's why when you have an experience in your life that can allow you to connect on a deeper level with your audience, that's why it's just so incredibly powerful. Marketing is not about platforms and tactics. Marketing's about understanding the fact that people make decisions with their heart and not their head. So if you're an agency, whether you're doing PPC or branding or both, I found a lot of success. We grew our business in 18 months from 0 to 80 clients in a niche where we just assumed the belief of the people who we served. And I still do believe what they believe. So it was easy because we could talk the same language and we had the same core belief system. And that's what allowed our agency to take off. I didn't spend $1 in paid ads and build a $2 million business in basically a year. So foundationally, and this is something I educate on as well, but foundationally, our story, so how we apply meaning? So our story determines our belief system. Our belief system determines our values, and our values are what actually are the fuel in the tank to carry us to our actions. So if an agency is looking for a bigger why, or if you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, whatever, if you're looking for the bigger why, you've got to go to your story. It's already in you. It's just that you can't see it. And that's why you need someone like me here to tell you to look back in your life at critical moments. Where are there loose ends in your story? Where was there an explosion in your story? This might be a good time if you're driving to pull over and write it down. Because like if you're seeing it right now, if the movie's playing in your head, there's something there. There's something there, and you've got to go back to it. Now, what I coach people to do is to actually go back to that story, but watch it like a movie and remove the emotion from it. Because the moment that we get caught up in our emotions, we lack the ability to look at it from someone else's point of view, because it becomes all personal and all these things. So watch it like a movie. What happened? What was the experience? What really happened? What was really going on? Because sometimes we make up stories. There's truth, and then there's emotional truth. So there's like what really happened versus what we feel like what happened. And our subconscious is very good at tricking us. And so the idea is get underneath the story and then find the common thread when it comes to the belief system of the people that you want to serve. So, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's the emotional truth and the actual truth. And I think it's something that 100%. a lot of people let themselves get swayed by their own subconscious kind of rewriting the small, intricate details that change the way the story actually played out. And I think entrepreneurs especially, or at least in my experience, can tell themselves a lot of things to make themselves feel better when it comes down to it. The best entrepreneurs I know are the people that have straight up put their hands up and gone, yeah, I dropped the ball on this, or, this didn't work out. But to be fair, we could have done so much more. We could have done X, we could have done Y. And yet the majority of people I meet, and over the years, I've been doing this now for 12 years as an agency. The amount of people I've met along that time that have started up, who haven't really ended up doing much after 6 months or a year, that have closed down, that have tried multiple ideas, multiple different things. But one of the key things is that when you talk to a certain type of person, they've rewritten history to the point where I honestly believe they've internalized it so much that they truly do believe it, and it's never their fault. Nothing ever happened because of them, or they were never really the masters of their own universe at that time. It was always because of X, the economy, Y, this client didn't pay, so therefore we went under. All of these other reasons or excuses or whatever it can be. But I think that is something that's huge, right? Being able to go back and to, without emotion, just take a look and actually review a bit of a play-by-play, right? As if you were commentating on sports. There's no, you might be a slight fan of one team or the other, but the reality is you call it like you see it. And that is what happened. And I think that's something that's very, very challenging for a lot of people. I guess that's probably where I'm going with this. How do you help people get past, let's call it what it is, the emotional BS that they've told themselves to make themselves feel better somewhere along the way?
I have the unique ability to create a massive amount of trust, which allows me to navigate those waters one-on-one with people. It's trust. Content builds relationships. Relationships build trust. And trust drives revenue or transformation. So in the same way that someone would follow a guide in the Amazon in an unknown place, they have no idea where they're going, but they trust that that person is bringing them in the right direction and will not harm them in the process, is the same trust that I'm able to develop with people in a mentorship capacity. And just like you were saying in commentary, you just got to call it like you see it. Leadership is about asking the right questions. And what I've also learned is that typically if someone's in a hot seat, the person who's in the hot seat does not retain as much value from that experience as the people around them. So if I'm working with someone and helping them overcome some blocks in their mindset and asking them a lot of questions, everyone else is asking themselves the same question too, except for they're not on the spot. They're not like exposed, right? So the spectators, in a way, get a ton of value out of that. And it becomes actually like tribal acceptance when we can be really vulnerable with one another, and it allows those walls to break down of the emotional BS that we've told ourselves. And that's the secret sauce that I don't even know what it is. But when people come to Denver, Colorado in the US, and I do meetups for every group that I mentor, it's groups of 12. We do a meetup in Denver, and it's funny. I kind of just let the journey play out. I, of course, I've done over 1,000 live events, so I'm no stranger to how to run them, and I have a million things I could talk about and all that. But I keep the plan accurate, but loose as far as contextual, whether it's feedback or like if someone's going to go there and they have something they need to talk about, like we're going to go there. I'm not going to allow the agenda to overrule someone's transformation. And in that process, it's just that person's own ability to show up in the way that they feel like they can, and they're trusted by the people around them. And the reason why I said earlier that I give out permission slips is because, I've helped my clients get over 1 billion views online over the last 10 years. And I've worked with some huge companies, and it doesn't matter if it's huge personalities in the marketing space, like Todd Herman and Scott Olford and Mike Kim, these guys who are huge in the US. As far as with digital marketing and being influencers on high performance and copywriting things. Or if it's with big brands like Microsoft and Pandora and Paychex, like it doesn't matter. The thesis is the same. And really, honestly, what it's going to come down to is the moment that whoever's in control of the voice mechanism of that brand, the quicker that they can get the skeleton out of the closet, the faster they win. So if you're Microsoft, and you have a horrible product launch, just talk about it. Here's what we did wrong. And here's what we've learned from it. And here's what we're going to do different next time. Or if you're a personal brand and you were abused as a kid, that's a hard thing. But the reality is that the first step in any process of healing, transformation, and also of really good marketing is by being vulnerable. And to the level of your willingness to be vulnerable and tell your story is the level that others will experience transformation, healing, and a massive amount of affinity for you. And this is where there's a fine line between manipulation and illumination. Illumination suggests I'm going to put a light in a dark spot, because where there is light, there cannot be darkness. This thing can't hold me back anymore. This old story, I'm going to reassign new meaning, and I'm actually going to bring it to light, which allows it to lose its power. And in the process of doing that, again, permission slips, as I teach people how to become the biggest influencers in their audience. And the first thing I have them do is tell a powerful personal story. What they don't know that I'm doing is I'm actually freeing them. I'm freeing them from themselves so they can go do their greatest work in the world. And they think it's just content strategy, which is fine. And I want them to think that. I want them to understand that they're following an intellectual process. But the most amount of transformation that I've seen is people coming in stone hard, just wanting to flex and being the biggest crybabies in the room. Because underneath that hard surface is actually someone who deeply cares about humanity and who loves other people and really who wants to see others succeed. But it was their experiences that they needed to redefine and release so they could go do their best work in the world. So that's that part of it.
There's a lot to be said about the vulnerability thing. And I think there's, again, a fine line between, and I think most of us nowadays, especially if we work in this kind of space, can spot it from a mile away. The bullshit stories on LinkedIn, terrible kind of pretend situations that this person did this or that or whatever it might be. But what I think is really interesting with the vulnerability side is, and I started experimenting with this earlier this year, which was sharing more about what I was doing kind of behind the scenes and on a much more personal level, rather than just what the company was doing or just what, the new content that we were creating to try and help people. And everything we do, our mission is put the social back into social media. My personal why, or my personal mission, I should say, my mission statement for me professionally is to really help have an impact on 1 million small businesses over the next 10 years, right? Whatever form that comes in, it might be a podcast, it might be a chat, it might be a video, anything I can do to put something out there that will help. But what I found when I started sharing a bit more insightfully about what I was doing personally, what my personal growth or my journey was looking like, things that I was reading, things that I've been looking at or pondering or asking other people for their opinion on a particular subject. And it's opened up huge new doors and actually, funnily enough, relationships, right? This vulnerability opens a side up that maybe people haven't seen, or people just presume that you don't necessarily even have. Because, we all have a kind of public facing and then a public facing company profile, as it were, on LinkedIn, or our public face when we're out and about representing our companies. But we forget that, at the end of the day, we are all human at absolutely every level, every single one of us, whether we're in B2B, B2C, everyone on the other side is a human, everyone on this side is a human. And actually that's quite an interesting kind of point of view that you mentioned there. And I guess what I'd love to know more about, or understand more about, is how you recommend that small to mid-sized businesses, and if there isn't, a really powerful story behind it, but how can they open up that vulnerability and tell a little bit more about themselves and kind of bring other people into that fold and build relationships through that, without them having this, big shocking story to be able to tell?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, if anyone's an entrepreneur, they have a good story. So again, that goes right to the structure of the story that we're telling ourselves. The only reason why someone would tell themselves that story is because they're lacking objectivity to see their greatness and to actually see what they've accomplished and what they've done. So that part of it, every entrepreneur has an amazing story, and you have to, because the number one job as an entrepreneur is to tell your story. That's the way that you really fuel the marketing engine. Like, I think that the platforms and tactics that we use to reach customers or prospects or new clients or whatever, those are going to keep changing. But the strategy for actually reaching out and touching other people, whether it's emotionally or literally, if you're do live events or whatever, who make decisions with their heart and not their head, that's going to always remain the same. So the idea is that the mechanisms of delivery will always adjust and change. They'll always, go from MySpace to TikTok, right? And so for us, we have to understand that human interaction, that human to human marketing, be it that's really the thesis. That's the core idea that we have to always be connected to. Most people, Chris, that I talk to around this, who are business owners, and it could be in certain different, it's like, it depends on the context. They're like, I own a coffee shop, I'm a professional, and I don't feel like telling a story about something that's, a skeleton in the closet. Okay. Then what are you going to talk about? And that's the idea, is like finding those things, finding those expressions. I think that you always have to go up to your line of vulnerability and then like step on it and go, this is where I am today. Because, the guy who did London Real, Brian Rose, he was a heroin addict. And a lot of people don't know that about him. But one day he just shot a video, and that's the only one that I remember about his personal story. He had addiction issues, and he was overweight, and he was a heroin addict. Entrepreneurs have stories. I think part of my calling is to tell the greatest stories ever told about entrepreneurs. So we have to find what those stories are. We have to go look back. We have to slow down. I'm not asking you to, again, tell super deep, dark things if that's not what you feel called to do. But you've got to express something. You've got to say something. And so if you can't find that objectivity, find someone who can help you find it. Even big brands, Papa John's Pizza in the United States, they have on their website, they're about a story. And it's about the guy who started it and like his whole life and all these things. And it's really compelling and really powerful. You don't see it on a commercial, but it's there. It's an expression that's there. There's 7 steps to building a very profitable 7-figure personal brand. And that doesn't matter if you're, a local business, like you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you own a coffee shop, you own a heating and cooling company. It doesn't matter. All the strategies are the same. And the first thing is personal story. Here's why it's important. And this is something, again, you might want to write down. People want to work with people, not companies. That is the massive shift that we've been experiencing over the last 5 years. More and more and more. It's going back to like the 1950s on spit shakes and I trust you and I know a guy, right? That's how it is. And so what relationships do is they, for the most part, cancel out your service as a commodity. That's what personal brand does. So I believe, this is my belief system based on my story and based on what I know, is that the future of business is in personal branding. And it's the only thing that separates you from every other commodity that's out there. Why should someone work with you and you offer the same exact service for the same exact price with the same exact outcome of anybody else? Why? It's always going to come down to, well, I trust him. I like him. We both like golf. We both whatever. It always comes down to very human elements. And so if you're not going to battle in the red ocean of just reducing costs in the agency world, then you better play in high touch, high connection, high relationship, and have a lot of integrity. Because if you play that game right, you'll win. I can promise you that. So for the context of your story, find it. It's your responsibility. The future of business is in personal branding. Everything in 2020, 2021, 2022, it's about intimacy and connection. The energetic shift in the world is going from very masculine to very feminine. And for lack of better terms, masculine is very penetrating and feminine is very accepting. So the whole entire ecosystem of, the Ferraris and the stuff and the whatever, it's not attractive to people anymore. I build a huge business is not attractive to people anymore. It's impact. It's about influence. It's about making a difference in the world. I don't have any judgment against someone who wants to drive around in a Lambo, but I do have a question, and it comes back to the core thesis of the conversation, which is why. What are you trying to prove? What is that proving to you? If you got to use that as leverage, as a chip on your shoulder to say you did it, fine, go do it. But I promise you, you're going to arrive to a point of where you have everything that you need, everything that you want, and you're going to be working 100 hours a week, not enjoying your life, missing the best moments with the people around you, going, why am I even doing this? And I can tell you that for one reason, and that's because that's what my story was. I may have not had a Ferrari, but I can tell you emphatically, I lost the most important relationships in my life. I missed the first 2 years of my kids' lives, and did not experience a high level of health or of high expression of life energetically, because I was building an agency for the wrong reason. In fact, I tell the story that I actually did it on accident. I built a $2 million business on accident without intent. Call it favor, call it you're good at what you do, whatever you want. It taught me the most valuable lessons in life, and certainly taught me the most valuable lessons about entrepreneurship. And that's that misalignment is the cardinal sin of an entrepreneur. Do not do something because it's a good idea on paper. You've got to find really what it is that your mission is all about. You've got to really dig deep to find what people want from the expression that you can give at your highest level. Measure your activities based on energetic levels. Is this something that you're really like absolute best at in the world and you love doing, or do you dislike doing it and you're kind of good at it? Because that will catch up with you over time. And I can tell you this for sure, and this is the last note on this topic, but I think that people will pay for your intangible value, whether that's your energy, your humor, whether that's your ability to connect and understand others. At the end of the day, the human thesis is that we all want to be understood. We all want to be understood. There's no higher reason for divorce than resentment. And resentment at its core is based on misunderstanding. Know what the people around you, what they really, really want, what they really need. And even if you have to sell them what they want to give them what they need, go ahead and do it so that you can leave your mark in the world. I think it's so important.
Nick, I think that's huge. And yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on pretty much everything you've just said. I didn't want to interrupt. I've been sat here listening and basically in awe. So yeah, I think thank you so much for coming on. I think this has been hugely eye-opening. We probably didn't talk about digital marketing at all, but I am known for going down rabbit holes, and I've much more enjoyed this conversation than talking about the processes of putting content up. But we might have to redo another conversation about that one other day. Nick, where can people find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I just want to thank you again for the time, and definitely, I'm happy to go tactical today. We went really underneath the surface, which is where the iceberg is, right? And it's really where the deep stuff around making sure that success happens for people exists. And so I appreciate you and value you creating space to have that conversation. And people can find me. My website is nickcavuoto.com, and you could jump on over there. And there's two spots that you can go once you get there. The first spot is I do run the #1 community for personal brands on Facebook. So you can check that out. It's facebook.com/groups/mentormind. And there's also a button there on my website. And also I have a giveaway for you guys if you want to check it out. And it's the 13 content formats that are proven to boost audience engagement. So if you want to get a little bit of IP from me before our next episode, you can go ahead and download some of the top performing prompts that I've used in my career in video production to get an edge in your content marketing. So that's on my website as well. So appreciate it. And Facebook, Instagram, really are probably the best places to find me. LinkedIn as well, but Instagram's my platform of choice. So feel free to jump on over there. And really appreciate it again, Chris. Thanks for the time and for the opportunity.
Nick, thank you. We'll drop links to everything you've mentioned into the show notes. And again, yes, we're definitely going to plan in a part 2 because I'd love to get into the tactics with you as well.
Cool, man.
Thanks again.
The All About Digital Marketing podcast is brought to you by Social Inc., a distributed digital marketing agency specialized in delivering results through online campaigns. Whether it's content marketing, social media marketing, online advertising, or web design, we've got you covered, from strategy through to delivery. If you're struggling with your digital marketing, get in touch today by simply visiting www.socialinc.co.